Adaora always walked with pride, her hips swayed not to invite, but to declare, her skin glowed not for praise, but for itself, no man owns me. I belong only to myself, she always said. Men could only stare, want, and desire, but wanting was all they were ever allowed to do. In the village of Obins, there lived a woman called Adaora. She did not announce herself, nor seek attention. She did not need to, it followed her. Adaora walked as one who knew exactly what she possessed. The air shifted when she passed, subtle but undeniable, like the moment before rain breaks. The sun found her easily, lingering on her skin as if reluctant to move on. Her skin held the deep, glowing richness of roasted cocoa beans kissed by fire. Her hips curved with deliberate grace, wide and unapologetic, her waist drawn in like it had been shaped by careful hands. Her chest rose proudly, her shoulders soft but certain, carrying a confidence that could not be taught or tamed. Men of all ages, young and old, married and single, poor and rich, could not help but notice her. Even the village elders, whose eyes were usually solemn with age, found themselves nodding in admiration as she passed. Traders from other towns, visiting for market day, whispered among themselves, wondering which lucky man had her hand. And yes, even some married men who ought to have been faithful, found their hearts skipping whenever Adaora appeared, their hands tightening around baskets of yams or kola nuts. Women noticed too. The wives, mothers, and young women who had once thought themselves the epitome of beauty felt a sting of envy whenever Adaora walked past. They whispered behind houses and under tree shadows, their voices dripping with resentment. Some threw pointed glances, some murmured curses, and some went so far as to spread bad tales about her character, hoping to tarnish her perfection. Adaora didn't care. Not for the stares, the sighs, or the envy. She walked through the village as if the paths themselves bowed to her steps, smiling openly at men who dared look too long. Her smile was confident, not seductively, but untouchable, saying plainly, "I see you. But I answer to no one but myself." One afternoon, under the shade of the old Adaora tree, Adaora sat with her friends, sipping palm wine. The sun had begun to soften, and the market hum was loud but comforting. She had been thinking. She was old enough to marry, strong enough to demand respect, and beautiful enough to attract the whole region if she wanted, and she wanted. But not in the usual way. Adaora did not want to be chosen by just one man. She wanted to see how men would scramble for her attention. That evening, she announced it to the village. Adaora climbed the wooden platform in the center of Obins, her wrapper swirling around her like the river itself had lent her its curves. She lifted her hands, and the chatter fell to a hush. "I, Adaora of Obins," she began, her voice rolling over the crowd like thunder and sunlight combined, declared to all men near and far, young and old, rich and poor, clever and strong, hear me well. I will choose 5 men to be my husbands. 5. Not 1, not 6 but 5. She paused, letting the murmurs rise and fall, then smiled, a smile that made men straighten their backs and women grit their teeth. "Any man who believes he is worthy must come to the square at dawn of the 3rd day from now. Bring your strength, your cunning, your courage, and dress in the finest clothes your hands can touch. Show me you are cleverer than the river bends, braver than the hunters in the forest, stronger than the sun that scorches the market stalls." Her eyes swept over the crowd, daring, fearless, as if she could see the heart of every man standing before her. "Fail to bring your best, and you shall return home with your head hung low, your pride broken, and your name forgotten. Only the worthy will stand before me. Only the worthy will earn my choice." With that, she tossed her head back and laughed, a sound like bells and storms at once, and the villagers, men and women alike, felt the air shift. This was no ordinary contest. This was Adaora's stage. The villagers gasped. Some women were crying and others were shaking with fear and anger, some men laughed nervously, and some elders whispered angrily, "Is she mad? 5 husbands. Adaora didn't care, and so the word spread. By nightfall, drums were beating in neighboring towns, traders whispered in the market, and messengers were already setting out to distant villages. Everyone wanted a piece of Adaora. On the third day, Obins had never seen a crowd like this. Men arrived before dawn, some barefoot, some riding donkeys, others arriving in borrowed wrappers, pretending confidence they did not possess. They came from neighboring villages, distant clans, even towns where Adaora's name had traveled like rumor and fire, young men with quick eyes, older men with thick beards and desperate hope, rich men who believed money could bend fate, poor men who believed strength could. Even married men came, lurking at the edges of the square, pretending they were only there to watch until Adaora laughed, and their resolve cracked. Adaora sat where everyone could see her, on a low wooden stool at the center of the square. Her wrapper, aqua, was tied high, the rich fabric clinging boldly to her hips without apology. Her blouse was neatly fitted, simple but commanding, and coral beads rested against her neck and wrist as though they had always belonged to her. A faint jingle came from the jigida beads around her waist whenever she shifted. She looked unbothered, powerful, entirely aware of what her presence was doing to the village of Obins. Some women scoffed, some hissed, some pulled their husbands closer. Adaora noticed, and smiled wider. The town crier stepped forward, striking his bell until silence fell. "Hear this," he shouted. "Adaora of Obins does not seek a weak man, nor a foolish one. Today, there will be trials, not of chance, but of what? Those who fail will live in shame. Those who remain will stand before her." Adaora rose slowly. "No tricks," she said clearly, "no bribery, no begging." Her eyes swept the men. "You will wrestle. You will endure. And you will learn how to lose without breaking." The square erupted. Some elderly men stepped in first, wisely. "No madness," one said. "Let them be matched." The men were divided into two groups. Strength against strength. Pride against pride. The ground was cleared, dust rose, wrappers were tightened. One by one, the matches began. Obina, the blacksmith, fought like iron, controlled, powerful, patient. He pinned his opponent cleanly, helped him up afterward. Adaora noticed that Uche, the palm wine tapper, laughed as he wrestled, nimble, tricky, dodging grips, winning not by force but speed. Chokudi, the wealthy trader, tried to intimidate his opponent with words first. When wrestling began, his confidence cracked. He lost, badly. Ifani, the quiet teacher, surprised everyone. He wasn't the strongest, but he studied his opponent, waited, then used balance and timing. When he won, the crowd gasped. Adaora leaned forward. "Eyes bright, strength is good," she said, loud enough for all to hear, "but how you use it matters." Losers were dismissed, bruised, embarrassed, some furious, some humbled. When the dust finally settled, Adaora lifted her hand. The square fell silent. "The next trial," she said, her voice steady, "will not be fought with fists." She turned to the men she had instructed earlier and gave a small nod. They understood immediately. They began to test the men, not their strength, but their temper. Accusations were murmured loud enough to sting. Old insults were dragged into the open. Women laughed openly, shaking their heads. Boys pointed, jeering, repeating words they barely understood. The air thickened. One man exploded, shouting curses. Another shoved the person beside him. One spat on the ground and stormed away, pride blazing hotter than sense. Adaora watched without blinking. She shook her head slowly. "Any man who cannot control his anger," she said calmly, "will never rule a household." Her hand dropped. The men who allowed pride and fury to overtake them, who cursed, shoved, or flung insults, were dismissed immediately, sent away without a word. The rest remained silent, jaws tight, breath measured, standing through the weight of humiliation without breaking, and Adaora nodded. These ones understood restraint. As the sun leaned toward the hills, Adaora announced the final test. The remaining men straightened, expecting strength, struggle, or combat again. Instead, she spoke calmly, "You will go to the stream." A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. "You will fetch water," she continued, "and you will return with it balanced on your heads, not on your hands. Spill it, and you are done." Laughter burst from the women. Mockery followed. "Is that not women's work?" someone shouted, as she finished shaming them. Some men scoffed openly. One shook his head. "I cannot disgrace myself like this." Another muttered, "My father would never forgive me." Several turned and walked away at once, clutching their wrappers as embarrassment and pride battled within them. Adaora watched them leave without a word. "The stream does not know gender," she said simply. "Only effort." The remaining men were handed clay pots. Without further argument, they ran. Dust rose behind them as they hurried toward the stream, muscles straining not from weight alone but from restraint, arms steady, palms flat, focus sharp. By the time they returned, breathless and sweating, the crowd had changed. Women who had mocked now watched closely. They whispered to one another, surprised. A young woman murmured, "If he can fetch water without shame, he can carry a household." Adaora rose. She walked among them, inspecting carefully. She was impressed. She smiled, not wide, but satisfied. These ones understood partnership. Night settled gently over Obins. The square was quieter now. Mud clung to ankles. Sweat cooled on skin. Pride lay stripped bare. Adaora stood before the few who remained. She did not rush. She did not praise. "You have been tested," she said, "not for power, but for humility." She paused. "Tomorrow, I will choose." The village hummed with unrest. Men slept uneasily that night. Women whispered fiercely. Those already dismissed lingered at the edges, hoping for mercy. Adaora returned to her compound alone, unbothered, unafraid, and fully in control. Morning did not come gently to Obins. It arrived with whispers. Women gathered at the stream before sunrise, voices sharp as broken pots. "She has finally lost her mind." One woman said. Another replied, "What kind of woman gathers men like goats?" Another replied too that her husband couldn't sleep. He kept turning like yam on fire. By the time the sun climbed halfway into the sky, the village square was already filling again, not just with men, but with everyone. Nobody wanted to miss what would happen next. Adaora bathed slowly that morning. She used warm water to bath. She oiled her skin carefully, not to impress anyone, but because she liked how it felt to glow. Her wrapper today, her blouse was simple, but her body filled it with confidence. She looked at herself once in the mirror. No doubt, no fear, only certainty. When Adaora entered the square, the noise dropped. Even the children fell quiet. The remaining men stood in a loose line, bruised, tired, hopeful, afraid. Obina stood tall, arms crossed, calm as stone. Uche grinned, though his eyes were sharp. Ifeanyi adjusted his wrapper nervously, breathing steady. Others, strong, capable men, waited silently too. Adaora walked slowly in front of them, barefoot on the earth, letting the dust rise around her ankles. "You came here wanting me," she began, voice clear. A murmur ran through the crowd. "You fought. You endured shame. You learned control. Some of you lost, not because you were weak, but because you were not ready." She stepped back, facing them all. "I will not marry a man who believes he owns me. I will not belong to one temper, one hunger, one ego." Gasps, angry whispers. A woman screamed, "Shameless." Adaora turned sharply. "If you don't like it," she said coolly, "cover your ears." Silence fell like a slap. "I said I was going to choose 5, Adaora said, "and I will choose them openly." She called their names, slowly, deliberately. Each man stepped forward, stunned. When the 5th name was spoken, the square exploded. The remaining men protested. Rejected suitors fell to their knees. "Please, Adaora. I will do anything. Even as the 6th. Let me serve." Gifts were thrown forward, goats, clothes, jewelry, money, promises. Adaora raised her hand. "No," the word was final. "I did not choose beggars. I chose men who stood when tested." Insults followed her home that day. "She thinks she's a goddess." she would destroy those men. This will bring a curse. But still, men stared. That evening, the 5 men arrived at her compound, not as owners, not as kings, as chosen. Adaora looked at them and smiled, not sweetly, not kindly. Understand this, she said, I do not fear loneliness, I do not fear loss. If any of you forget yourselves, you will live the way you came. None of them spoke, they were overflowing with joy. For the first time in Obin's history, a woman did not wait to be chosen, she chose. The next morning sun shone brightly over Obin's, but it was no ordinary morning. The villagers whispered and pointed as Adaora stepped out of her compound, radiant as ever, wrapped in bright fabrics that clung to her curves. Hair swinging, hips swaying like the river in flood, behind her, in a line that drew gasps and chuckles, followed her 5 husbands, Obina, the blacksmith, Uche, the palm wine tapper, Ifani, the careful thinker, Chinidu, a clever farmer, and Emeka, a quiet but strong hunter. They had become the talk of every village and town nearby. Women envied her. Men despised her. Children stared, fascinated. And Adaora. She walked like a queen among her loyal knights. The compound is large, wide enough to hold silence when Adaora desires it and noise when she allows it. It has a cooking hut, a solid main house, 5 rooms for her husbands and a barn, all arranged with deliberate order. It is here that Adaora demonstrates her rule, her boldness, and her humor, not with shouting, but with certainty. Obina. She called, voice loud and commanding. Go fetch water from the stream. But don't spill a drop, or I will make you run back in your underwear. Obina, muscles flexing, sprinted toward the stream, balancing a clay pot carefully. He grinned at her. Yes, my queen. Uche sat beside her, hands firm but gentle, kneading the muscles of her legs. His fingers pressed expertly, and he laughed softly. You work too hard, my Adaora. Let me handle this part. She smiled, leaning back slightly, letting the warmth of his touch ease the tension. Even in service, he carried that reckless charm she loved. Ifani and Chinidu started cooking breakfast, chopping vegetables, and stirring palm oil into a bubbling pot of yam porridge. Emeka swept the compound meticulously, glancing occasionally at Adaora, trying to anticipate her next command. Adaora clapped her hands, laughing loudly. Yes, yes. This is how life should be, joyful, busy, and under my order. The annual festival arrived, drumming through the village from dawn to dusk. Bright fabrics, dancing, and feasting filling every corner of Obin's. Adaora appeared at the square, walking proudly with her 5 husbands by her side. Each wore the matching fabrics Adaora had chosen. They moved in harmony as they followed her lead, a striking display of unity and elegance. Each man moved with purpose, one carrying her basket, another shading her with a parasol, one keeping children at bay, the remaining 2 fanning her and bearing gifts. Whispers of admiration and envy floated through the crowd. Men gritted their teeth. Children trailed behind, eyes wide, unable to look away. Adaora laughed at every murmur, hips swaying with a confidence no one dared challenge, with a power that drew eyes and hushed voices alike. During the festival, she even made the day playful, teasing her husbands into little competitions, dancing, spinning and twirling. Adaora clapped at each performance, awarding praise with a mischievous smile. You all amuse me, my kings, she said. And Adaora ruled the night. She chose who would spend time with her, sometimes calling 2 husbands at once, sometimes more, teasing, laughing, and asserting her playful authority. The men obeyed gladly, joking among themselves while learning to enjoy her game. Together, they worked and lived, united, planting crops, cleaning the compound, fetching water, cooking meals, and celebrating festivals with laughter and music. Disputes were settled with her sharp wit and fearless voice, not anger. Adaora had created her own kingdom in Obin's, ruled not by fear or money, but by charisma, wit, beauty, and boldness. And the villagers would talk about her for generations to come.